Okay, welcome everybody. This is our Getting Started with WordPress class tonight. We appreciate so many of you joining us on a nice cold evening. And Alyssa Hansen is going to be our presenter. She's the library's web developer, so you will be in very good hands as she introduces you to this tool used for making websites. So I'll hand it over to Alyssa.
Yes, thank you. And of course, my cat decided he needed to join us tonight as well. So anyway, so like Stacey said, I'm Alyssa. I have been the web specialist at the library for the past 4.5 years, so going on 5. And I've been working in WordPress since 2014. So I don't work with it as much as I used to, but it was the first experience that I had with site building. So I still really enjoy working in WordPress, and I hope that this kind of gives you a good overview of what it's capable of. Okay, so we're going to go over, this is a quick outline of the content that we're going to cover tonight. And so we're going to look at, what do you need to know to get started with WordPress? We'll look at how are you adding content to the site, look at changing the design, and also how to add functionality. Things that we won't cover. We're not going to learn how to code. So anything that needs code access in order to change it, we won't be going over any of that. It's going to be strictly, things that you can do on the back end without having to, delve into the developing part of it. So we're not going to learn how to create plugins or themes. Okay, so, I'm sorry. My cat just stood on my my keyboard. Let's try this again. Display, we're going to swap this. Sorry about that. Okay, going back. We're not going to cover code. Getting started. So what is WordPress? So WordPress, it's a software that's used to build websites. And so the main focus of WordPress is that it is built with blogging in mind. So if you are wanting to start a blog, WordPress might be a good option for you. And another thing about WordPress is that it's open source. So if you don't know what that means, it means that the code base itself is free to use, and anybody can use it, whether it's for commercial or nonprofit use, and that code is just available for anyone who wants it. You'll often hear WordPress referred to as a content management system, and it's just one of a multitude of different types of content management systems, also known as CMSs, and it's just a way for you to manage the info that you're wanting to put out on your website. And I'll also say that WordPress is kind of a choose your own adventure. So you can, delve really deeply and go into adding a lot of functionality, but you also don't have to. Like you can, the core part of WordPress is really, a good enough CMS for starting your own website. So, you can kind of decide like how much or little you want to add to your website. Okay, so even though we talk about WordPress being free as open source, there is a cost associated with having a website. And so that's with your hosting. And so making your website available to people out on the web does cost money. And so this is a screenshot from WordPress's website to show you, these are some of the ones that they recommend, that they know hosting services that have WordPress in mind. A lot of them have what are called one-click installers, where you just click a button and it literally installs it for you. So you don't have to do any sort of the setup that way. So that's really useful. The other thing I'll point out here is that there is a difference between WordPress.org versus WordPress.com. And so WordPress.org is where you can find the code base that is the open source, free to use software, the files that make up that framework. The WordPress.com is a commercial entity which hosts WordPress sites. And so if you knew you wanted to have a WordPress site, they might be one that you would have to host your site. WordPress.com also makes it really easy for you to set up like a free site to try out. Now my other cat's here too. So you can try it out without having to pay anything. So that can also be a route to go if you want to just try it out without having to commit to hosting services right away. Okay, and then another thing that you'll want to keep in mind is that there's going to be maintenance that's associated with a WordPress site. And this is true of any site in general. So whether you have WordPress or another CMS, you're going to have to keep it up to date so that it stays secure. So you can see in this screenshot, not only is WordPress out of date, but it looks like there's also plugins and themes that also need updates here. So it will tell you when those are necessary, which is really nice. So you just kind of want to remember that and work that into your workflow with your website. And you always want to make sure that you're doing backups before you update. And it's always a good idea to just do backups regularly anyway, because, if something were to happen to your site where, you were hacked or something else terrible happened, then you want to be able to restore that site. So that's just a little bit to know about like the maintenance side of WordPress and any website in general. And so we're going to go on to some of the demos. So how the presentation tonight is going to work, I should have said this up front, was that, so I've got slides, but then I've also got a demo site that we're just going to look at. And I'm going to kind of show you, what does this look like when you're making changes. So next up is we're going to look at what does it look like to access the site and on the back end side of it, and then also look at adding users. So this will be the next thing that we look at as well. And so with adding users, one thing that you'll see with that is that there are these 5 different roles. And so with the roles, these are the basic ones that come with WordPress, and there are plugins that allow you to change them or add different ones. But so the administrator is kind of like the head of all the things, and so they can change anything on the website. Then there's editors who can they can add and edit anyone's posts. Authors can only add or edit their own posts. Contributors can add but not publish their posts, so they can just put content up. And then subscribers can only manage their profile. So there's really not much for them to do. So that is a little bit about kind of the setup stuff. And so now I'm going to switch over to my demo site. So this is what we call the backend part of WordPress. And so if you're going to make any changes on your website, this is where you're going to come. And so you can see that we're on the dashboard of the backend side. And so you can customize this backend, the dashboard. So you can see like there's boxes here that you could add things to. They come with, some already set up, and you can use these, or you don't have to. You could also get rid of them. But it also has this nice box up here that kind of walks you through. These are the things that you want to think about when you're first setting up your site. So you want to, write your first blog post, add an about page, set up a home page. So different things like that. And it has a little bit of like steps for walking you through that. So this is the dashboard part, and this will be where you come after you've logged in. And so, and this is where you come to make changes. And so all along the side, these are the different things that we'll be going over throughout the night. But so the first thing we're going to look at is adding users. So we'll click on users, and then you can see the list of users for the site. So these are the people who have access, and it'll tell you over here on the side, like we were just talking about with the roles of what is it that they have permission to do on the site. And so there's an admin user here, which has the administrative role. And then there's also a user here called Herschel, which is my cat, who has an author role. So he would be able to add and edit his own posts. But so to add a new one, you can just click the button up here for adding new. You're going to come up with a name, a username, and the username cannot be changed. So you want to make sure that it is a good one. And then example, Benny is also my cat. And he doesn't need a website, and we're just gonna put this as cat. And if you definitely want to make sure that your password is very strong, because when you put your website out there, anybody is going to have access to that login. And so that password should be a very strong one so that it's less likely to be hacked. But so in this case, because this is a test site, we're going to confirm the use of a weak password. And then he doesn't need a notification about it, but then we can change what role. And so we're going to go ahead and just add him as an author as well. So that's adding a new user. And so then once we do that, now you can see that he has been added to this list, and we can go back in. So let's go into, this is the admin's profile, but anybody's profile is going to have the same sort of capabilities. So you can change, there's different ways you can make the backend look for you. And then you can also, change how your name is displayed if you need to change your email or any bio or profile picture. You can do that. So that is users. So that is kind of just like the basic, like you'll want to put in users for everyone who needs access to your site in order to make changes. And then the other part of setup is that you want to go through all of these settings. So this tab down here at the bottom, there are several pages here, and you want to go through all of them and set them up before you put out your website. But it's just things like, what's the title of your website? What is like that, like admin email. There's information here about how dates should be formatted or displayed. The writing page is about, who can write posts, and reading is about like viewing posts, and then discussion would be comments. Media is like adding files to the site. Permalinks is, what's the standard for creating new links within the site. And then privacy would be if you're collecting any sort of data from users, you definitely need a privacy policy, and you want to set that up there. So those are settings. And like I said, they're all fairly self-explanatory. And if you don't know what something is, you can always look it up online. But these are just the pages that you want to go through one by one, all the things to set up the site. And then there's tools. And so in the tools, the main thing, you may or may not need the tools. So if you're coming from another site and you're wanting to import data, so you want to move data from another site to your WordPress site, you can use an importer for that. And so they have several different blogging site types where you can import content from there. And one of them is WordPress. So say you're moving, you want to change you're updating the theme, and you're, importing from your old site to your new one. You might use that. Or like same on the other side is if you're exporting and you need to export the data, there's also the ability to do that. So those are some tools. And then the site health is another one that's good to check regularly, because it'll tell you, these are some things that might be problematic with your site, such as like inactive plugins or inactive themes, or things like if your site is not using HTTPS, which indicates that it is a secure site. So like things like that will appear in here. So those are just kind of some initial like setup types of things associated with your site. Okay, we're going to switch back to the presentation part of it. Okay, so now we're going to get into adding content. What does that look like? And so the two different content types that you have on a WordPress site are you have posts and you have pages. And so they can be a little bit confusing because they're very similar. But so posts are going to be what you consider are or what you associate with blogging. And so posts they're dated, they have author information, and they're organized by categories and tags. So posts are going to be like news things that you're putting out, or like other blog types of information. Pages, on the other hand, are going to be your static content. So they're more timeless. They're not going to be dated. They're just kind of like assumed to always be up to date. And they're not organized with like categories or tags, but they're organized within likely a menu or like the site structure as a whole. So that's the difference between those two. And the screenshots on these pages are just the settings that are associated with those. And we'll take a look at that in a little bit. And I'm going to switch back over to the demo site shortly. But so the next things that we're going to cover are adding post and page elements and what that looks like using what are called blocks. And so there's lots of different block types that you can add. And so this is a screenshot of lots of the options that are available. But so you can think about your content in terms of like chunking it in like, this is an image, this is a paragraph of text, this is a pull quote, or this is a table or a list, or, all of these things. And we'll look at what these look like when you're adding them. But then also, what does it look like to add media? Because with any website, you're always going to have, your images and your PDFs that you need to add to the site, as well as what does it look like to moderate comments? Like once you put your blog out, and you might not want to necessarily allow for comments, but if you do, you do have the option of moderating them. So just because someone submits a comment to your blog doesn't mean that it's necessarily live right away. You can reserve the right to, either approve or delete that comment as you would like. But anyway, okay, so those are the things that we're going to go over next in the demo. Switching back to our demo site. So we're going to jump up to, so we've got posts and we've got pages. And so they're going to be very similar. We've got, so here, that was posts, and this is pages. And so they're just lists of things that that you've already put out, or maybe you've got in like draft phases. And so we can add a new one, and then we'll look at what does that look like. And so it'll take you to this editor. And so this is just like that screenshot I was showing earlier. So we can add a title. So let's just say we're going to add an about page. And so we've got our title in. And so now down here is where we're going to start using those blocks. And so if you had used WordPress prior to like a couple of years ago, you might be familiar with the old editor, which is called WYSIWYG, or what you see is what you get. And so they've gone away from that, and they're using this block system, which is from the plugin called Gutenberg, or an editor called Gutenberg. And so what it forces you to do is think about it, chunking the information that you have on your website to make it easier to kind of understand. And along with that, it also forces you to really think about, well, what is this going to, how is this going to behave on mobile? Because that's definitely one of the things you always want to be thinking about when you're, creating anything that goes on your website. How does this look on mobile? Because more and more people are using mobile, or accessing websites from their mobile devices. Okay, so blocks. So we've got our block down here. And so we can click the little plus sign back over here, and that will give us some options. So these are some of the common ones that people would use, but you can click on Browse All, and it will pull up all of the options that you have available. And so we're just going to kind of fill in some filler content. So we're going to do an image to start with, because your about page probably is going to have an image. And I'm going to do a picture of my cats, whom you have already met. But so it's loading. You can see that in just a second, it'll be loaded into this page. There it goes. So now we have an image. And the other thing that's nice about blocks is that it takes away the pressure of having to format every little thing. So with blocks, your theme sets what each block type should display as, and you don't want to have to, mess with that, because then you get a lot of inconsistencies, and it's just better to let the theme decide, how everything should look. Okay, so we've got our image in here. So now that we have that, we can go on to our next block, and let's say that we want to add some text, which is just called paragraph. But so we're going to put some text in here. This is Benny and Herschel. They're very cuddly. And so then we can hit enter, and that will put that paragraph text in there. And so then we could go on, we could add, more text, or we could add something else. So maybe we would put in something like a header, and maybe we will put in their favorite foods. And so maybe in this case, we want to put in a list. And so then we would go into our block, and it's not in our list here, but list is an option here. So then this will give us bullets as an option. So they really like tuna, and they like seafood, wet food. So now we've got our list in there. So blocks are just a really easy way to, add content, and just you pick what type of content that you want to put in, and it will just put it in for you. And then it gives you options. So depending on what content type, you've got this bar here that it shows, these are the options that I have for formatting whatever it is. So I could, if this was a numbered list, I could change that to that. Or if I wanted to, let's go back up here and say, we want this text in bold, we can do that. So you just kind of want to look for this box will give you the options that you have available to you for the different types of blocks. And then another thing that you can do with blocks is, so say you want something that you want to put on multiple different pages. So let's say you want to put a text that says, ask us whatever, ask us anything. And so then what you can do is actually click on these three little dots. It gives you more options. And you can add this to your reusable blocks. And so then the next time I go to make a page, instead of rewriting that same thing, I could go back and reuse this block. And so then, and I can name it. Everything's kind of like all over itself right now. Oh, it's not going to go away. Okay. Ask us. Okay. We're going to save that. Open, I got an extra A. Okay. So then we have that block. So next time that we go to add a block, you'll see over here, we have another tab. And so then, oh, and I must have already done one. But so you can add that again. And so then the nice thing is that now when I make changes to one of these, it will make changes, the same change to all of those reusable blocks. Ask us about our favorite toys. Okay. You save that. And now it does the same thing in both of those. So it offers a lot of reusability as well within blocks. Okay, so those are just some of the basics. You can play around, like you can see here, there are so many in there. And the nice thing is you can just try it. And if you don't like it, you can take it out. So let's say that I want to get rid of one of these, I can click on these 3 little dots and just remove it. And so, because we don't need 2 of those in there. So now we have our page. Okay, so that is the content itself. And then we can go over here and look at, these are the settings that we can set within the page. A lot of these are self-explanatory. Who should be able to view it? That's the visibility. You can set it as private or password protected if needed. And you can also decide when it's going to be published. So this would be more useful for posts if you want to write blog posts ahead of time. You can say, don't publish this until tomorrow at 10 a.m. or whatever. So you can do that. And then you also have the option for changing things like, what does the link look like? You can also add in a featured image. Featured images, depending on your theme, that will determine where the featured image goes or like how it's displayed. But you can put that in there to be associated with that content, make it a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, basically. And then discussion, you can turn comments on or off for individual posts or pages. And then page attributes. For pages, it's like establishing that hierarchy. So like, where is this page in relation to any of the other pages that are on my website? Okay, so that's a little bit about settings. And then up here at the top, we've got other options. So we can save it as a draft if we're not ready to publish it yet, but we want to come back to it later. We can also preview it. Previewing it is really nice because then it also has that, do I want to view it as a desktop, tablet, or mobile view? And so we could click on mobile and it'll show that here, but then we can also do the preview in a new tab. So if we click that, it will also allow us to see, without all of the settings and things, this is what it will appear like in context on our website. But then we can just say publish if we're ready to publish it. And so we'll say publish. And after a little bit of loading, it is now published on our website and you can go and view that now live. So now it's there. So that is about adding content using the block system. So let's go back to the part about adding media. So we added that picture into, we added that picture with the cats. And so what happened when we added that is that it went into our media library. So now this picture, I don't have to re-upload it to the site. I can reuse it in another block if I wanted to on another page. And so that can help cut down on duplication across the website. And so you can see here, it gives you some metadata about it, and you can also fill in other things about it. So one thing that you always want to make sure that you're doing is filling in alternative text on all the images that you put on your website, because alternative text is what is used for people who are accessing your website via a screen reader. But alternative text is also used for search engines. If you were to Google something and you do an image search, Google is actually looking at the alternative text as one way to pull images for relevant searches. So it can also be a way to make your images findable. But so that's the media library. You can upload things to the media library before you add them into pages, or you can do it, directly from the page that you need it on. So it can go either way. If there are things that you want to upload to your website, but not necessarily put them on a page, this would be the way to go. You would go into your media, the media library, and you can add new and just upload those files. And then you could see back here, it gives you the URL where that file is located. So then you could send that to someone else if you needed to. So that's the media library. And then the other side of blog posts is you're also hopefully getting comments on your blog. And so comments is just another tab here. And so you can see this list here shows all the comments that are on your website. So this is a new one, so it just has the sample one here. But if you, anytime that you're looking at a list in WordPress, if you hover over it, it's always going to give you more options, or almost always gives you more options. So you can see here that there's a link here to unapprove it, which means that it's already been approved. So it's already live on the website. There's a quick link here for replying. And it's always a good idea to reply to comments, you know, even if it's just a thank you, just to acknowledge that you got the comment. And if needed, you can also edit it, or you can mark it as spam or trash it. And so, you know, just because somebody puts in a comment doesn't mean that you necessarily have to put it out on your website. If it is like demeaning or derogatory in any way, like you can just decide to not publish it. So that is comment moderation, and you can turn on, I think there is a way to turn on notifications. So when you get a comment, it would tell you that it's there so that you can, you know, go to your site and you're not having to check it regularly. So these top four are kind of those that are associated with the content side of the website. Any questions so far? I've kind of been going really quickly, but feel free to put them in the chat. I can answer them, you know, before we move on, but otherwise we'll just jump on into the next section.
Yeah, Tom here. I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
These categories of users, administrator, editor, author, contributor, are these similar for other web hosting programs, or is this unique to WordPress?
Well, all of like any content management system is always going to have its own. So it kind of is unique to WordPress, but every content management system is going to have its own version of that. And so it really depends. WordPress is, because it's mainly geared towards blogging, the roles that it has are geared towards like a blogging or like a news workflow. And so that's why they are what they are. And so if you're looking at a different content management system, it might be different depending on like what is that content management system like geared towards. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And then there's a chat. How do you back up the site? So that will likely require, it depends, always depends. So it will likely require you to install a plugin for that. There are, if you have some hosting services do have like a backup service that's associated with them. So that could be something that you, when you're evaluating hosting services, you could look to see if that's something that they offer. But if not, then there's also plugins that allow you to do a backup where you're just downloading. A lot of them are just a click of the button and you can say, I want to back up the files, I want to back up the database, or I want to back up both. And so then you can download that to your computer so you have those locally. And it might be an option where you could also back it up to like your server, your hosting service. So those are both options. So yeah, like I said, it just depends on which route you go, whether your hosting services has it as a feature that they offer, or you go the plugin route where it's an added feature that you add into your website.
And are the plugins generally free and also open source, or could there be a charge?
Yeah, so and we're actually going to talk more about plugins later, but they go both ways. So they can be free, but then they can also be paid. Okay. All right, let's get We will go back to our presentation and move on to the next content, which is looking at changing the design of the website. And so this is going to be changing the theme of the WordPress site, and we'll look at the customizer menus and widgets during this section. So choosing a theme. So things you want to keep in mind when you're choosing a theme for your site. You want to do some research, and it's really important to really look for more information about a theme before you decide to go with it. One, it has to be mobile friendly. That's just not an option anymore in the web world. But you also want to look for, can you test it out before you install it on your site? Because that will help you kind of determine, is this a good fit for, my organization, and like how it looks. But you also want to look for documentation. Another big thing is, even if it looks really great, if you don't know how to use it and you don't know how to, update things, then it's not going to be very useful for you. And so look for if the developer of the theme has documentation around it. And if not, then it might be one that you want to pass on. And you also want to look for things like accessibility. So looking to see if the description mentions that the theme is accessible. And so that'll be for, you just know that it's a well-rounded theme if they mention accessibility, because it will be easier to use for, not only people with disabilities, but also everyone in general. And just like with plugins, not all are free. So a lot of, pretty much everything in the WordPress world, everything is kind of like on or not everything, but a lot of things are on like we have a free version, but we also have a paid version set up. And so you want to, that should be a part of your research, is when you're looking and evaluating a theme and whether you want to go to it, is look, is this a free, or is it like a freemium type of theme? Because a lot of times, like, they have like some things available in the free version, but then like all the things you want are in the paid version. So that can also be something that you're looking at for evaluating themes. And just because it's not free doesn't mean that you should like stay away from it. Like, there are some really great paid themes out there, but definitely if you're going to pay for it, you want to make sure that it has documentation and that it meets all of your other check marks before you pay for it. And then there was a question in the chat, what does mobile friendly mean? And so mobile friendly means that like anyone who has a smartphone should be able to view it in a browser on their device. And so a lot of times when, or at least then like when the web was still new, all websites were like a static width, and if it was viewed on any on a different width than it was originally intended for, then it just looked terrible. But so being mobile friendly means that somebody who is accessing it on their phone, their smartphone, is going to get a very similar experience. And like, they're still going to be able to navigate that site and find the content that they're looking for, similarly to somebody who's accessing it on a desktop. So that's mobile friendly. Okay. So then, again, we're going to switch back to the demo site. But so some of the things that we're going to just look at in this next section is we'll look at what is the customizer and how does it make changes. We'll look at menus, and then also look at briefly widgets. So switching back over, we're going to switch to the appearance theme, or the appearance tab, which is where the theme information is located. So once it loads, we will look at those. There it goes. Okay, so when you install the basic version of WordPress, you're always going to, it always comes with these default themes. So that's what you're seeing here across here, this row here, and they always have a new one every year. So that's the naming scheme. So this is 2021's theme of the year. This was 2020's, and this was 2019's. And so you're most likely not going to want to use these, but these are just the basic ones that get added. And so we can look at this add new button will pull up a lot of different ones that we can kind of browse through and see really quickly various options. And so it'll take you to this screen where we've got across the top, there's featured ones, there's popular ones, there's like new ones. And then if you favorited any, then you can look at that. And so a lot of times I just like to look at what's popular, because I know that if a lot of people are installing it, then it probably is a good indicator that it's a solid theme or has like a lot of support associated with it. So you can look at what's popular. There's also an option here for filtering. So if there's something in particular that you're wanting to look for, so say your organization, is a restaurant, you could look at just themes that are kind of geared more towards like a food and drink theme. Or if you're working on a personal portfolio, you could look at ones that are specifically for that. And then you can also check specific features that you're also looking for. And so this could be, like checking the accessibility ready is an important one. And then, any of these other features that you're really looking for, like maybe you really need like a full width template, you could add that in there. But so we could apply those filters. And so then we can see what's left out of those options. And so then you can just kind of browse here. If you hover over, it'll give you this option to preview it. And so you click on that. Over on the side, you've got some basic information about it. So it's got a brief description. If there's any ratings, it will give you that like a star rating for the theme and then how many people have rated it. But then it also gives you this preview over here on the right-hand side of, this is a preview of what that theme looks like. So this is a very simple one. It's just a lot of white space. So if we close that one, maybe we try, let's look at this one. Maybe it's a little bit different. Yeah, so this one's a little bit different. So you can see here that, it's very colorful and has some different elements to it. And this one does have a rating. So this has the star ratings. You can see that there's 8 ratings here. But I think it is interesting that I added this filtering by these 2 things, and most of the top ones are not there. Anyway, we're going to go back to.
Can I jump in for a second?
Yes.
So for that theme that had the big tropical leaf, that doesn't mean that you would be tied to having that tropical leaf necessarily, just that you could put your own giant image there in its place.
Yes. Yeah. And that is actually, so with themes, the other thing that you'll see a lot of times is, so I was looking at this one earlier. So with this, I can preview this one. Even though this preview has this nice, huge, banner here, and it's got, cool graphics here, like their preview really isn't much. So it looks very different. And so you want to keep that in mind as well, that just because you're choosing a theme doesn't mean that your website is going to immediately look like what's in the preview. That's why like evaluating and like looking at a lot of them is important, because you want to look at like things like fonts and colors, or colors can be changed, but just kind of like layouts and things. Like you said, like the image on the on like that one, that is customizable. You can add that to pretty much any theme. The theme is really just kind of like, what are you getting the opportunity to change in the customizer, which we'll look at in just a second. Yeah, and the other thing, I guess I forgot to mention this, with themes, there's also a lot of themes but also need a plugin to be installed to get all of the features that are maybe demoed with that theme. And so that's another thing to keep in mind when you're doing your research is you might also need to be installing a plugin that goes along with that theme to get all of the functionality. But so we've got this one, and because it's one of the most popular ones, I'm just going to install it. And so we can click on install here. There was an install button on the page we were just on too. But so hopefully it'll just take a second or so to install it. But so it's pulling in all the files from that theme into our website in order to make it available for us to use. So this is what happens with live demos, is you have to wait a little bit sometimes.
While it does that, can I just ask if anybody here did make websites with code before, and if this sort of seems like this is like you're paying or you're getting someone else to do the CSS for you or all of the formatting all at once? Does that ring a bell for anybody, or are people pretty much new to websites with us tonight?
New to websites.
New to
Thanks for
website.
chiming in.
New. Okay.
Cool. Yeah, well, WordPress is a good place to start because it is one of the more simple, or not simple, but it is one of the kind of like starter or gateway content management systems for a lot of people. But okay, so it has finished installing. And so now we have this option to activate it. So we can click on this, and this is going to make that theme. When you activate it, that means that it's becoming your website's theme. So we just made that the theme of our website. And so when you do that, you also have the option of customizing it. And so the customizer is one of the great things about WordPress themes is that, so I can go to this customize page, and this will allow me anything that the theme has made available for me to change. I can change it within the customizer. And so as this loads, you can see here over on the left that it has a lot of options for various things that I have access to change. So without having to know any code, I can go in and I can look at, the global styles. And so I can change this typography. So also known as the font. But so I could change, maybe I want the entire site to be in Helvetica. So I could go in and change that. And so then once I make that change, it automatically over on this right side is going to show me what does that look like on my site in particular, which is amazing. And I love it. The customizer is really like depending on the theme, and this one is several layers deep, but so depending on the theme, you might have more or fewer options in here. So this one has, roughly 10 in there, but some, might only have 4, or some might have even more than that. But this one, like I clicked on one of these, and like not only does it have a lot of options, but it also has like more layers. So like I can go in and look at changing the colors. So in this case, maybe I want my link color to be green. So I could change that to a green, and then it has like a thing where I can really narrow down on the exact shade or tint that I would like. And again, it updates that preview right away, which is really nice. So that is the customizer. And we're kind of running short on time, and I want to leave time for questions at the end. But so we're going to move on. But so the customizer is really great, allows you to see your changes that you're making in the theme right away on your site. And then once you're done with, any of the changes you're interested in making, then you can say publish, and that will make it live on the site. And, maybe you make some changes. So let's say that, we moved this logo over here to the center and we're like, oh, we did not like that. You can click the X up here and it'll say, are you sure you want to go away? And without saving your changes, and you can say, yes, I don't like that, so I can go away. So that is customizing themes. And so then also within themes, we've also got, you can change your menu. So as you get the pages put up on your website that you're interested in, you can set the menu that goes along with your site. And so you can see this is one that I just set up ahead of time. But so, you can include like an about page or a contact page. And the nice thing is once you have those pages created, when you want to add them over on the left column here, I can go in and say, I want to add an about page, and I can say, add this to my menu, and it will add that over here to my menu here. Now I need to remember to save it so that it stays. Another thing that you can do directly from here is if you want to create a hierarchy within your menu, so say you wanted like drop downs, you can actually pull this over, you can drag it over. And so now that is what it's called a sub item in that menu. So now the contact is going to be displayed in the main menu part of it. But then I also have this link to the second link to about that's going to be shown as a drop down under that. And you can, create as many layers as you would like. This is probably a bad idea, but you could create various layers depending on the hierarchy that you need in your site. So that's menus, and then widgets. Stay on this page, I forgot to save it. Okay, so we saved it. And now we're going to move on to widgets. Widgets, they're going to be, so this is actually one thing that your theme might change, but also plugins might change. And so there are a lot of widgets that are available with a default WordPress site. So things like the archives, archives are, past posts. And so maybe I want, and I actually already did it. I can move, I moved this archives over to the main sidebar and I renamed it past posts. And so now anytime there's, I post a new blog post, it will get pulled into this list. So I don't have to do anything with it. It just automatically updates itself, takes care of itself. And so there's lots of different things here that you could add in, and you can just, read through those and see what sorts of things you have available to you. But so there's the different sections here are different places on your website where you might want to put widgets. And so these extra ones are actually associated with the theme that we just installed. So if I wanted to put, I don't know, let's say an RSS feed in our footer, I can move that over to that, and then I could, put that in there, and then it'll pull that into the footer space on the website. I don't know if I mentioned this, but so like header, if you're not familiar, is the top part of the website. So it's on every page, and then footer is on the bottom of every page. So those are two locations you would have on every website. Okay, so that is appearance. And then we only have 5 minutes left. We kind of already talked about the plugins a little bit, but they're very similar in terms of like when you're looking for plugins, you want to evaluate them the same way that you would. Oh, my PowerPoint just died. That was weird. You want to evaluate them the same way that you would for themes. Like you want to, do your research and see. Oh, it's going to make me swap them again. Do your research, make sure that any features that it's adding are mobile friendly, that they're accessible, that it has documentation. This slide is exactly the same. So yeah, and test out the plugin too. And some of the things that you might look for in a plugin are features that you might look for in a plugin that don't come with WordPress, like the default version of WordPress is. You might look for a contact form, or you might look for a plugin that will allow you to create a calendar of events. Things like caching or backups, like we already talked about backups. You might look for a plugin that does that if your hosting service doesn't. You can look for ones that create more widget types. So if you want like a Facebook feed to appear on your website, that could be something from a plugin, or statistics, or so commerce related things. So whether you have a site where you want people to buy things from your store, or maybe it's like donations. There are tons of plugins that do all of these things, and so you can just kind of do that research, find one that works for you. And like we talked about earlier, a lot of times it does have that, a lot of times there's a free version and then there's a paid version. And so you just kind of want to evaluate, what am I getting with each? And so then we'll look at the backend side. Switch back over to my demo site. And feel free, if anybody needs to leave, you can. This is getting recorded, so it'll be on the library's website in the next couple of weeks. But so we'll switch over.
It's live, so it'll be up right away.
Oh, there we go. So we'll switch over to the plugins tab. So this is where you would add those. So it looks pretty much exactly the same as the themes one, where you can see these are ones that come with it. And so this Ask Is Met is anti-spam. It's actually, even though it comes with WordPress, you have to have an account to use it, I think. So be aware of that. And then the Hello Dolly is not one that you would probably ever use on a live site. Yes, thank you for coming. And then Hello Dolly, it just adds lyrics from the song Hello Dolly. So it's just kind of like a fun thing. But anyway, so plugins, you can add them similarly to themes. It's going to pull up a page where you can look at, what are the featured, popular, and recommended ones, and any favorites if you have them. So I'll switch over to the popular ones, and you can see that some of these are very popular. So like this one has more than 5 million active installations, which is a lot. And so if you find one that you can, again, look through the list. If you see something that's interesting, you can click on it to get more details. It'll give you, a more full description. There's a lot of information over here on this side that you kind of want to take a look at. So you want to look at, compatibility, ratings, that sort of thing. And then, what does it look like to install it? You can also see screenshots are really nice too. So I'm actually going to install this one just as the demo. But so WordPress is really nice. You can, almost any plugin or theme that you're wanting, it's almost always just a one-click install on them. And then they're not always active. They're never activated right away. So you have to make that extra step to say, yes, I want this to be activated on my site. And so we'll go ahead and do that. You would never do this on a live site where you just, willy-nilly add things. But because this is a demo, it's fine. But so we just activated this contact form plugin. And then, of course, every plugin is different. So in this case, this one has a settings page, and it links that right here. But you can also see that it added this extra tab over here for contact. And so that settings page is the same as this link. But so I can flip over here, and you can see that the backend side of it looks very similar to a lot of the other pages that we were looking at, where it just, it has this list where you can add new up here, or you can click on old ones. It comes, it looks like with a default contact form, and you could go in here. It looks a little bit complicated, but usually you just have to read the things. And then one thing I wanted to mention with this is a lot of times with plugins, you'll see short codes being used. And so it looks intimidating, but you just copy and paste it into, so we could flip back over to a page, and let's say that we want to add a new one for contact. And so I've copied that, that short code so that if I put in a contact here, oh, I did not copy it. But that's okay because it also is in here. This one I know gives me the option of pulling in a contact form widget. And so I can put that in here. And so it already has that pre-selected. Sorry, I'm going through this very fast, but this is just an example of one plugin and how it adds functionality to your site. So it's just kind of adding that in, and I could preview this in a new tab. And so then I can see it's going to pull in that contact form that came default with that plugin. And there it is. So that is just a little bit about, or that's an example of a plugin that you could install. And everyone is different. So there's no like standard way of how plugins add functionality. And so that's why that documentation is very important when you look for, when you're looking for plugins. Okay, so it was a lot of information. That was the basics for getting started with WordPress. And these are the things that we covered. So if anybody has any follow-up questions, I am available to stick around and answer any questions if people have them. Or if you want to email me, you can also email me. That will get included in the follow-up email. So yeah, thank you everyone for coming. I hope that you learned something.
If no one has questions, but please do ask your questions. We would also love to hear what kind of website you're imagining making, or you're already,
Yes.
you already have. Or if this was just theoretical and you wanted to know what other people were doing, that's great too.
Well, our club is thinking of having a website. And so I consider this kind of exposure. We have some tech-like members, very techy members, but I kind of see myself as more of a novice user. And so that's why I wanted to look at this. I use different websites, obviously, and some of them I think are more user-friendly. My experience has been that sometimes the tech people don't make it quite as user-friendly. That's just been my experience. So I'm coming in as a novice. I see this as exposure. Thank you for the exposure. I
Yeah,
didn't
you're
get every
welcome.
detail, but I didn't expect to.
Yeah, well, and I mean, if it's something that your organization ends up going to, maybe it's something that where you really only need to know how to add the content, and you don't really, need all of the like management side of things. So that is also, it's very common. Like once a site is already set up, the main things that you really need to know is how do I add a blog post, and how do I format that? So hopefully we covered that well enough. But does anybody else have thoughts about, where they're coming from?
So this is Minetta. Actually, I don't have my video activated. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I actually manage some websites for an aviation group that I'm in, and have created. So I use WordPress, and I've created subdomains for our different chapters. And the one question I have is, so you get messages to update PHP. And I understand that that's probably important to update. But I also wonder how much, when you update it, how much risk there is to having the update mess up your website or subdomains. That's
Yes.
a generic question, I know.
That is definitely like a more advanced side of things. So with any update, there's always the possibility that something could go wrong. And that's why backups are really important. That, you know, a part of that routine maintenance is making sure that you're also taking regular backups. And so I'm not really sure necessarily in your case, but I would definitely say, like, once you do the backup, it's fairly safe to do the, you know, to go ahead and try that update. Because if something does go wrong, you have a backup to restore to. But yeah, definitely. And like doing regular updates is also important, so that you never have to do like a major one, because the longer it's been, the more likely it is for something to go wrong, you know, when you've got like compatibility issues, which is what it kind of sounds like is maybe happening. And I don't know if that's something that might actually be something that your like your hosting service might need to address, but that would be something that you could talk to them about.
So what is the purpose of PHP?
So WordPress, the files themselves are coded in PHP. PHP is a language, and that is what WordPress is written in, like the functionality part of it.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Okay, well, we'll plan to send a follow-up email. I'll make sure that it includes Alyssa's email address so you can direct any follow-up questions to her. We also have a survey that we'd appreciate you filling out for feedback, and also with any suggestions for future classes. So if this brought up some other narrow website related topic that makes a difference for you, or WordPress 2.0 class, just let us know what you're interested in so that we know what we should think about. And then let's see. And then I think Alyssa said she would also share her slides.
Yes, I will.
I hope I didn't miss them in an email, but we'll get the slides to you as well so that you can revisit all of that great information she shared.
Awesome.
Okay, I'm going to
thank you everyone for coming.